What does Old McDonald's farm and flushing the toilet have to do with good health? Stay tuned for this segment of Kentucky Health and find out what.
Kentucky Health addresses the healthcare concerns of all residents of Kentucky and surrounding states. It was created by Dr. Wayne Tuckson, a colorectal surgeon practicing in Louisville. Here is your host, Dr. Wayne Tuckson.
Hi, and welcome to this segment of Kentucky Health. As you may have guessed from our opening segment, today we want to talk about what happens in the bathroom. You know, there was a book put out several years ago called Everyone Poops. And this is true. We all do it. Some of us do it behind closed doors. Some of us like to have the doors open. Some of us do it out in the open when we're out hunting or fishing, what have you, but we all do it. And the point is, after we do it, what happens at that point? One of the things that happens is illustrated by one of the characters in the book is he wipes himself with paper, then flushes it down. Now, we're going to talk about things today, not only what happens after things get flushed down, but what is it you're supposed to do after you wipe yourself and you're ready to leave the toilet? But first, let's try to follow that stool as it leaves the toilet and see where it goes. Let's join Katrina out at Morris Foreman Treatment Center and see what happens there.
Thanks, Dr. Tuckson. I'm here at the Morris Foreman plant with the Executive Director of MSD, Bud Chardine.
How are you today?
Good, how are you?
You're here at the Morris Foreman Water Quality Treatment Center, and Katrina, it is the largest wastewater treatment facility in the state of Kentucky.
Wow.
We can treat up to 140 million gallons of wastewater a day during dry weather periods, and during rainy weather, since it's on a combined sewer system, we can treat up to 350 million gallons and give it primary treatment before it goes to the Ohio River. So it's a very large plant.
Yeah, can you tell us exactly what happens after the toilet is flushed?
After the toilet's flushed, your wastewater, if you will, is going to run through a series of pipes. Now, Louisville Metro has 3,200 miles of sewer in the entire county. That's a lot of miles. So depending on where you live, it may take an hour, it may take 2 hours, it may take 3 hours for your wastewater from your toilet to get to the plant. But once it gets to the plant, there's a very large sewer. It's about 25 feet in diameter under this roadway. And as it comes down, it comes to this point, and then we start separating the wastewater into 4 different streams. And we call this primary treatment. The reason we call it primary treatment is because this is a combined sewer system. It can have road debris in it, it can have leaves in it, it can have twigs in it, things that wash into storm drains along streets and curbs. It can have railroad ties in it, it can have truck tires in it. So in primary, our focus is to get rid of these large solids that can't be broken down in the treatment process. Now the interesting thing is, until 1975, we only had primary treatment at Morris Foreman. We only took out the big things. We didn't deal with the biological process. We didn't break down the bacteria. We didn't remove the solid waste, the human waste from the stream, and it went directly to the river. But with the Federal Clean Water Act in 1973, we started building secondary treatment plants along the Ohio River, the Mississippi River, all major cities in the United States. And so in '76, the secondary phase of the plant came online. Now that's a higher level of treatment. And today we remove about 97% of all the pollutants in wastewater before it goes to the Ohio River. We've met our federal and state permit limits at this plant, and we're very proud to say for 4.5 years. 4.5 years without missing our permit requirements. But in this biological process, I want you to start thinking of a digestive system. We all have a digestive system. We eat food, it goes to our stomach. it goes through basically anaerobic digestion in our intestinal tract before we discharge it, and it's treated waste to a point. Well, in a wastewater treatment plant, it's the same principle. We're going to extract the solids, the waste product from human beings, and that's what we're about. We like to say we're number one in the number two business, and we think we are. And so what we're going to do is pull those solids off, and we're going to put them in digesters, and those digesters are acting as our digestive system. They're breaking those solids down. And as we do that, we're going to capture the methane gas, because gas is a byproduct of digestion. We're going to capture that methane because it burns. Then we're going to take the solids and we're going to pipe them over into the main equipment room. And this is where we make Louisville Green, our commercial fertilizer. It's a biofertilizer. It's made from waste, and it has an A rating from EPA and the National Biosolids Council. It's marketed in 11 states. We make 84 tons a day.
Wow.
It goes on golf courses. It goes on agricultural fields. It's tested on a daily basis to make sure there aren't any toxics, there aren't any heavy metals, and we're putting it on fields throughout 11 states in the Midwest and the Mid-South. The methane that I just spoke about is piped over into the building, and we use that methane gas to fire our ovens to make the pellets that make the fertilizer. So we've cut our natural gas consumption by 40%, which is what we call a beneficial reuse. It's sustainability. It's green because we're not using the gas that could be used to heat someone's home. We're using the gas that we're producing as a byproduct to create our fertilizer product. So in all, I think one of the things we're most proud of in the past decade is that we're meeting permit on the Ohio River, which is a good thing. That's good for water quality in the river. At the same time, we're creating a fertilizer that's not a liability as a solid anymore. We're saving our customers about $1 million a year in landfill fees, and we're creating a revenue stream that goes right back into the operation and maintenance budget of this plant.
All right, and now you talk about this fertilizer. Can people use it on their lawn?
Sure, and we bag a certain percentage of it every year. It goes into 40-pound bags. You can buy it in local lawn and garden stores. It's called Louisville Green. That's the trade name. And Louisville Green, as I say, 84 tons a day. Yeah. And we have, the only problem we have is we have farmers waiting for it who can't get it because you can only make so much of the product because we only have so much of the product coming in the pipe.
Right. And what was happening with the solid waste before you developed the process to make the fertilizer?
We'd have to send the solid waste every day to a local landfill, and that was costing our customers almost $1 million a year to dump that waste. It was also a very smelly process, and people who lived in the western half of Louisville, and sometimes even the eastern half, if the wind was blowing strong enough, smelled this plant. Now, when you came in this morning, Katrina, I think I could have blindfolded you and you wouldn't have known you were in a waste treatment plant.
You're right. And so you say the Ohio River is clean. How clean would you say it is?
I think the Ohio River, as far as point source, and when we talk about point source, we're talking about pipes.
Okay.
And in years past, when sewers ran directly to the river, the Ohio River was filthy. There's no doubt about it. It still has to be improved because we have non-point source pollutants, and I think they're the largest cause of water degradation that we face today. But that's fertilizers, that's herbicides, that's pesticides, that's oil, that's gasoline, things that wash off of parking lots, things that wash off of feed lots. They still continue to flow into the river. But when the river has been still with no rainfall for several days, I'm not afraid to get in and swim or water ski. The river is a much cleaner place to be now because wastewater treatment plants all along the Ohio River and the Mississippi and the Missouri and any other river in this country or lake now have secondary wastewater treatment. So when you flush that toilet at home, a lot of people just think out of sight, out of mind. Right. It's gone. But they also need to think about the process that we go through Number one, to move it through 3,200 miles of pipe, it takes a lot of people to maintain that system. And then to get it to a treatment plant, and we have 6 of these plants, not as large as this one, but 6 major regional plants in Jefferson County. And every day people work around the clock, 3 shifts a day, to make sure that number one, we're meeting our state and our federal requirements before we discharge it to the river. And number two, we have a beneficial reuse and a solids product that we can sell commercially. And so I take great pride in what the people at this facility do. And when we talk about green and we talk about a cleaner environment, this is, I think, testament to both.
That's so awesome. Well, we're so excited about what's going on here at the Morris Foreman plant. Mr. Chardine, thank you for taking time out today to talk to us.
I've enjoyed it.
Back to you, Dr. Tuckson.
Thank you very much, Katrina. With us today to talk about the other side of the coin and the importance of hand washing is Dr. Matt Zahn, who is the acting director of the Louisville Metro Department of Health and Wellness. Matt, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Wayne.
Now, I think one of the most underrated and least used things in terms of healthcare is hand washing.
No, I think there's no doubt about it. You know, it's funny because with all of the infectious illnesses that have come around in the last several years, H1N1 kind of being, you know, the biggest, but E. coli is out there as an issue. Shigella is out there, typhoid. We try and think of a lot of exotic ways to prevent ourselves from getting sick and from being safe from these types of illnesses, but the truth is that the low-tech method of washing your hands remains number one as the best way to protect yourself.
Well, you know, I guess when I think about it, you have to worry about body secretions that can get on the hands that can transmit diseases.
Sure.
I guess some of the more common ones of those things would be things like cytomegalovirus, typhoid, staphylococcal problems, and Epstein-Barr virus. Then there are the fecal oral transmitted diseases, which would be salmonella, shigella, hepatitis, giardia, enterococcus, amoebas, and campylobacter.
Yeah.
And then there's plain old, like you said, then we're coughing and sneezing into our hands, so you get the flu, common cold, et cetera.
Right. No, that's absolutely so. So you can catch different of these germs different ways, no doubt about it. And as you'd said, there are some of them that right after you use the bathroom is the biggest time to protect yourself, you know, or to protect people around you. And for sure, the ones who give you diarrhea, GI illnesses, right after, you know, you're going to the bathroom, that's the time to, you know, try and clean yourself up and try and protect other people. There are other illnesses like flu, for example, that when you are sick, washing your hands a lot or staying away from work or from school to protect other people is important. But by the same token, when other people around you that are sick, washing your hands frequently, and especially if you're taking care of someone who's sick, like your child, washing your hands all the time, it's a really good way to protect yourself. It's the best way you can protect yourself.
That's an interesting point. Who are the people who really, you know, when are the times you should wash your hands?
Well, I mean, using the restroom, always you should be, because some of us are sick with illnesses that we know we can pass on to other people, but sometimes you're not sick, and so being safe at that point is important. A really big time, as I mentioned before, is when you are taking care of a child. So again, children, they are germ factories. I mean, they are sick with illnesses all the time. It's part of growing up. It's a rite of passage. So when you are changing their diapers, it's very often possible they are going to have an infectious germ in their stool, and so washing your hands, you know, right after, every time after you're taking care of that baby is an important thing. Another big part is when your child is sick. You know, I mean, I have a 7-year-old boy. When he gets sick, I can't, you know, you can't not love him and take care of him and do all those things, but that involves a lot of close contact. So to protect yourself from getting sick and from passing it on to other people, washing my hands an awful lot of the time, you know, around him is the right thing to do. When you're taking care of your child and your child's sick, you got to take care of your child. That's what we all have to do, but wash your hands a lot. That's important too.
What about cooking, particularly certain types of meats and things?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you got to realize something about meats, and in particular, for example, chickens. Okay, there is no process in place in the world that is going to make it so bacteria like Campylobacter and Salmonella will not be potentially present in the chicken that comes to your house that you buy from the grocery store. What does that mean? It means, number one, you got to cook it well, because that's the way to kill the bacteria. But number two, your point's exactly right. After you're doing that cooking and you're handling that raw meat, you got to wash your hands, because again, there isn't a process to make that 100% safe. You got to do that yourself.
I guess another time, we all take out the trash, garbage. Should we be concerned at that point?
Yeah, I mean, it's a potential. I think that the biggest issue are human secretions, okay? So if you're taking out the trash and it's a trash that's full of a whole bunch of Kleenex, yeah, you think about that in that kind of situation. But I think people worry about, surfaces like the ground or the, or just general trash filled as being a huge risk factor. It's always a good idea to wash your hands. Sure, it's possible. Again, you could have Kleenex, or you could have someone who was sucking on a straw in a McDonald's, cup, and then you throw it in that can, and then so those secretions come forward. But boy, the biggest time protect yourself from passing to other people is washing your hands to clean off your own secretions, and then catching it from other people to you. Washing your hands again is the way to, that's the time.
We all have pets, or most of us have pets around, dog, cat, and then I guess turtles and other reptiles and things. What about then, when handling these animals, should you wash your hands afterwards with those?
Yeah, absolutely, and you hit on a big one, reptiles. That is a big source of salmonella. Anytime any doctor sees a case of salmonella, the first thing they'll ask you is, you got a turtle or do you have a salamander at home? Because those animals can be infected with these bacteria, shed them for a long period of time and be infectious. They're not sick, you don't know about it, they just got it in their body, and so you got to wash your hands afterwards. And for an awful lot of animals that exist, you got to be careful about it. E. coli 0157 that we all think about. There are animals that certainly is potential for passing that bacteria around, and so if you have whenever, we're talking about a zoo situation, or we're talking about, the Kentucky State Fair wasn't that long ago. In those situations, those places will always be real aggressive about saying, wash your hands afterwards. Before you're done petting these animals, go wash your hands afterwards, or right after you're done. And that's the reason why. There's a good science behind it.
Let's get down to the technique and what's available. So best I can figure, they're either using a water-based technique or non-water-based technique.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do we have there?
Yeah, I mean, water-based, is the tried and true. Soap and water, washing your hands for 20 seconds thoroughly with soap and water. There's nothing better than that. You've got a few of them in front of you now. Some of the alcohol-based cleansers, they work, they're good. One of the biggest issues, is there any advantage to them over soap and water? Only one is, it's just a lot easier to make them accessible. You can't carry around a sink with you. You can carry around these bottles with you, and that's an easy way to make yourself safe. Do we recommend that? Yeah, absolutely. In hospitals, and I'm sure you've been there too, in hospitals, they have hand sanitizers like this all over the place. The reason is because, again, they can make it available to all the doctors and nurses and families and everybody who wants to wash their hands again and again. So both ways work. The biggest thing is, you got to be thorough about it.
What kind of clues or suggestions can you offer so that people can do a thorough job of hand washing? Because I've seen, and I'm sure you have, the drive-by where somebody kind of goes through, it's a quick rinse, maybe one hand rinse, and then moving on.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't, number one, there isn't a substitute for just paying attention to it. I think that most of us, when we know, they're just like my son. My son will go to the bathroom and he'll come out and I'll say, did you wash your hands? And he'll look at me and you know what he did. He put his hands under the water. He didn't think very hard about it, didn't dry them off very well, and he just didn't do it. You pay attention to it and take some time doing it. If you spend 20 seconds cleaning off your hands, as opposed to that 1 second running under the water and then just wiping on a towel, you're going to do better. In terms of technique, the one thing I always think of in my mind, when they've looked at people and washing their hands, and what they'll do is they'll give people the dye. You've seen people do. You give them the dye and you have them wash their hands, and afterwards you put them under the UV light and say where you haven't touched anywhere to figure it out. back of your fingers. You know, the backs here is the biggest place where people will miss again and again and again. Everybody does the palms, everybody does the front of your hands, and then you kind of do this deal here, but you miss the backs of the tips of your fingers. That's a big place where people miss. If you think in those terms, you think a little bit about being thorough, and you spend 20 seconds or more. You said, you know, I think we've talked about it. You can sing whatever song you want to do. I think people think there's a magic song. There isn't a magic song. Whatever song takes you 20 seconds to sing, that's the one that'll work for you.
A good chorus of Old McDonald's or even Happy Birthday.
Yeah.
So then if you don't use the soap, what about the alcohol? What's the proper way of using the alcohol solution?
You know, there's nothing terribly different. Then you take the thing out, put it all over your hands, and you make sure you cover every place. You know, again, this will not protect you against in an area where you do not cover your hands. So you got to use enough. That's number one. Number two, you got to make sure that, again, you know, you pay attention to the places where in your mind, you know what, I bet I can miss, in between the fingers and the tips of the fingers. As long as you do that, you're going to be fine.
So what is it? Usually a 60% alcohol solution is what we're looking for when trying to select a product?
It tends to be along those lines or better. Yeah.
What about if the hands are grossly soiled? Does the alcohol work as well?
Yeah,
as the
I mean
soap?
that is the one downfall to alcohol. You know, if you know you had to change a dirty diaper and things didn't go well, okay, you know you got a mess and you can see that the mess is on your hands. Just covering it with alcohol hand gel, that isn't going to work. And so, in particular, you're changing diapers, or you're in a situation where you're going to be dealing with a lot of stool, you know, so you're going to have something that you can see on your hands. You should really wash your hands with soap and water to begin with. Use the water to get most of that material off, you know, and then kind of do some washing with some soap and water after that, you know, to clean things up.
What do you recommend for people who go camping or go fishing when they're away from any kind of facilities? What is your suggestion for them?
Well, hand gel is a real good opportunity at that time. One big thing is, you know, we always end up in that scenario where people are, you know, they're near a natural source of water. Well, that to drink and to use to wash your hands, maybe not. If that's a perfect reason to think about bringing a hand gel, because it's extremely portable. You can take it to the great outdoors, and that works.
Works out fine. I've often found that some of the mistakes, at least that I've seen, is that people will oftentimes use a towel in the house, and everybody comes along and wipes themselves with that. How does that stand?
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, the 20 seconds doesn't involve, that doesn't count, you know, time spent rubbing yourself off, you know, on the towel. Number one, if you use that as your method, that towel's going to become pretty dirty pretty quickly. You know, that's not the way you want to go. The towel's purpose should be to dry off your hands, not to clean them. So when we're talking about 20 seconds, that's 20 seconds of running under soap and water and, you know, washing the material off and sterilizing it. So
finally, what about if you got one towel, and I've seen this so often in sports arenas where everyone uses that same towel. Bad idea?
Yeah, it's a terrible idea. And if you and you know from sports, prisons, hate to say it, enclosed areas where all people are all staying together. When you've seen outbreaks of illness, and we see that and we deal with that at the health department, one of the biggest sources we go to right away is everybody using the same thing? And you know well enough to know people be amazed to know what people use the same thing of. So they'll use the same soap, and they will use the same towel, and they will use the same razor. All of those things, sharing those, you know, a lot, it can reach up and bite you.
Well, thank you for being with us. Thank you for being with us in this segment. Alcohol or soap, use it when you come out of the toilet. Simple rubbing and washing the hands. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us here at at Kentucky Health at InsideBB.com. I'll get the name right sometime. Thank you for being with us. Matt, thank you for being with us today. We hope to see you again.